Hello, everybody. I am back with another webinar, and I am going to present the topic related to research on key elements in research design and methodology. And I'm going to be online within 5 to 10 minutes. So hopefully, we will have this interesting webinar on key elements in research design and methodology. If you want to take a look of my slides and you want to get access of my slides, you can take a look by clicking the link that has been given below. And I leave this link in the chat box as well. And you can click the link and you can get access of my slides in one settings. And we need more time to finish these basic research. But I leave this thing in two sections, maybe more than two sessions. But in the first session, we are only discussing the basic concepts or basic things regarding research, and especially in two sections, maybe more than two sessions. Especially, this is linked to undergraduate students that face a lot of difficulty regarding the questions students they usually ask. And most of the time students ask me basic questions about what are the key elements, what is variable, what is dependent variable, how to do samples, what are the way to do samples, methods, and we will going to discuss these all elements in this lecture. And I'm going to be online within 5 to 10 minutes to present this topic. So if you need to know the basics, especially for behavior research and how to design the method, this is for you. But if you already done research, especially for postgraduate students that need more in-depth knowledge, then you have to wait for my upcoming webinars. As I'm planning to do a number of webinars on different statistical tools such as SPSS, Smart PLS, MOS, and I'm going to explain them in terms of context. If we have one context and then we have the data, how can we use the data to analyze, and what are the key things that must be remembered. If you follow my crowdcast, I always presenting some webinars on interesting topic, and few weeks before I already present one of the webinar on the quality synthesis, and I mentioned that what are the things that is actually lacking in our research, and that is why we get a lot of rejections. And I think I done this webinar on 16th May. If you check my crowdcast, you can follow that. How to enhance the quality and transparency of health research. This is the title of webinar on 16th May that I did on quality improvement of the research, especially health research. So if you're following my updates, you can take a look of these updates, and I'm keep posting a lot of webinars on different topics. So you can follow my updates. But this webinar is specific to especially undergraduate students that are not familiar with the research design, and that don't know the basics of the research. And I'm going to assist them in this webinar to guide them some step by step, some basic things, and that are basic thing that is necessary to understand before the start of research. We have a couple of students online right now, and I welcome everyone to join this webinar. We have Emily is online, so I say hi to Emily, and then we have Yisha is online. So I welcome everyone to come online, and I would like to say thanks to them to come and join my webinar. The one of the best thing that I'm using this Crowdcast. Many people ask me that why you are using Crowdcast, why you're not using Zoom or other software, and my answer is that this is actually only for the webinar purposes. Zoom have some teaching methods for using teaching, but for webinar, Crowdcast is more efficient. Secondly, you have the option to revisit the webinar even if you are not online right now, as many students are busy with their other assignments and other tasks, so they are not available all the time. So this webinar will help you to revise what we have discussed before, and you can take a look of webinar anytime, even I finish my webinar. So that's the plus point of the Crowdcast that I found. The second thing that I'm using Crowdcast is the interface and their interconnectivity with multi-streaming channels. Like at the same time, when I'm presenting using Crowdcast, I'm live in YouTube as well. So that's one of the benefits of using Crowdcast, that you can do multi-streaming at one time. And I'm presenting this webinar not only through Crowdcast, but through YouTube channel is I'm also online. So the broader visibility of my knowledge will be helpful for everybody, if they are my students or they are not my students, as the knowledge share is helpful for getting learning from everybody. So that is good. You learn from different people and you learn from different things. So we have Visha is online, so I'm inviting her to come on the screen. And let's see, we will discuss in 5 minutes about the key elements in research design. So those who are just joined, I say hello to everybody, and I hope you are listening my voice very clearly. And you can see my link on my website. I already shared a link on healthsmrjournal.com, where you click the link and you can find the slides for today lecture. And this is very important lecture for basics. Again, I'm talking about students that I'm teaching in the class, and the problem with most of them, they don't know what is research. And when I give them the task to do them, then it faces me a lot of problem, and I have to explain from one by one everything from zero to everything to explain. So especially this webinar is actually for my all students. Either I'm teaching right now or I'm not teaching. I already teach them before. So this will help you to understand the basics of the research if you want to do the research on behavior science. So especially the behavior science research, for social science research, this topic will helpful to understand the basics. And many students will ask me which test we need to perform. So students are not familiar with the statistical tools. And I already mentioned several times to my students that you need to do practice. If you do practice, then it will be good for you, because the research can be made better and better with the passage of time. The better you practice, the better you become. So this is very important if you want to learn especially the basic elements. I also welcome another my student, Alanis. I welcome you in this class, and thank you for coming. Then we have also a couple of people have joined now. Ciao, or hopefully I pronounced properly. So hello, and thank you so much for coming in this webinar. And I'm going to present within last. I'm waiting for you to come online, and then I will present this topic. And I I already shared the link to you. So I want to welcome to everyone to join this webinar. And another thing that is important, that this webinar is live, not only in Crowdcast, but also live in YouTube channel, my YouTube channel. So if anyone is facing problem, unable to connect using Crowdcast, because I think some of the students from mainland China, they are facing difficulty to connect with Crowdcast. So I already shared the link, and I'm going to share again. of the YouTube link that you can take a look. You can connect with my YouTube channel through live streaming. You can take a look. And those that are connected with me live in Crowdcast, we have a lot of things to discuss. We can interact. I want to explain you that you can ask any question, you can create any information, you can ask a question through any topic, or you can suggest a topic. And we have also a chat box that's helpful to interact if you are facing any problem. And let's discuss the topic now, because we have started the topic now. So thank you so much for coming the topic. So the topic is key element in research design and methodology. And we see that in any form of research, you will require to either count the things or talk to the people. So the main important thing is that whenever you start doing a research, and usually in broader context, there are two types of research. One is quantitative research, and the other one is qualitative research. And when I mention the statement in any form of research, you will require to either count the things or talk to the people. So when we are using the term counting the things, remember the term quantitative research, because usually quantitative research, we are either requested to count the things by calculating the frequency, or by calculating mean, median, different statistical tool like t-test for analysis. Whereas in qualitative research, we usually do thematic analysis or content analysis, where we have maybe the data will be very small, but is more explanatory regarding to the interview-based research. So usually we discuss the research in two sections. One is quantitative research, and the second thing is qualitative research. Now the next question is that how can we identify the research is quantitative? So I mentioned, as the name suggests, is concerned with trying to quantify the things. So the word is actually inside, the meaning is inside the word. Quantitative word come from quantify, quantification. And quantification mean how long, how many, how much degree of anything you need to assess. Whether you need to assess the perception, you need to find out the intention, or you need to identify the behavior of any particular person or particular disease, or you need to do the clinical trials, for example, in terms of comparing with the control or placebo with the treatment. We study them in the quantitative research, and there are different type of quantitative research, and it depend upon what is our problem and what is the objective of our research. When we talk about qualitative research, it is more considered in terms of the quality of the material that is available, in terms of the quality of the information. And usually the qualitative research is structured or semi-structured or unstructured research, where we have some theme on some problem, and we prepare sometimes structured or sometimes unstructured questions. And in that case, the data that we're collecting may be from maybe few participants, maybe 5 to 10 participants, not more than I think 20. We are having the small people, and we are not quantifying the data. We are trying to get the quality extracted from the questions, and then we do in-depth analysis on the text or context that we get from the respondent. So the qualitative research and quantitative research are both are different in context. Then if we want to differentiate between the quantitative science and qualitative science, this table will help you to understand very clearly about different between the quantitative and qualitative. And when we take a look of the comparison, we found very interestingly that If you take a look of the aims, when we compare the aims of the qualitative and quantitative, we found that in quantitative studies, the aim is to count the things in an attempt to explain what is observed. So that is very important, that I already discussed before, quantification, counting the things. Whereas qualitative research is actually more like a descriptive study, more detailed description what has been observed. For example, if a patient suffering from pain, so the physician can ask that what kind of pain you feel, whether it is a punching pain or damp pain. So the respondent will ask, will reply according to the what he feel. So it more in term of the emotions, in term of the detailed observation that a patient feels. Whereas when we talk about quantitative study, it is more very specific, counting the things. And we will discuss in detail that how we count the things later on. Then the purpose in quantitative science is generalizability, prediction, and casual explanation. Whereas when we talk about qualitative study, it is more contextual interpretation and understanding the perspective. So when we study the quantitative study, it is more generalized and sometimes it is predictive and it is more causal behaviors. It is to understand the relationships between different variables. Whereas when we talk about qualitative study, it is more contextual and more thematic. And we have one theme, like if somebody facing the pain, we ask the question regarding to pain, which kind of pain the patient have and why a patient have. So it is more particular to the specific thing. Whereas quantitative study is a more general concept that is talking many things at one time. So that's the two differences. So qualitative is more in-depth. It is more contextual, relating to some effect, cause and effect, we can say. In quantitative studies, when we talk about it is more general, it is more predictive and causal explanation. Then the tools has been applying when we say that quantitative studies is all about the tools. We know from Excel to Smart PLS to JCP to MOS, so many statistical tools. Whereas when we study the qualitative studies, usually we don't use much of the tools, and the only available software is NVivo and Atlasti. I know you are not familiar with the software, but you just need to know that for the analysis of the data, we need some statistical tools. So quantitative study can be done by a number of softwares. Stata is another software for quantitative studies, whereas for qualitative studies, we're using NVivo and Atlasti for thematic analysis, for word count. So usually we're not using much software in the qualitative studies. Then the data collection, when we see in quantitative, it is more structured, whereas in qualitative, it is unstructured. But sometimes it could be structured. It is not always unstructured. Because then when we do the interview could be semi-structured or structured or unstructured. But usually it is mostly the search on qualitative analysis is unstructured. So that is why the author put this inside unstructured. Then when we talk about the output actually in quantitative science is in the form of numbers and statistics like t-test or ANOVA test or man-white t-test. Whereas when we talk about qualitative, it is more in the form of words, pictures, and objects. Like making the word cloud is the common example, or pictures to explain that concept is more in qualitative science. That is why actually the lot of research, actually the world today belong to the data. So most of the research actually done on quantitative basis, more on the statistical tools, and qualitative science is limited because of it is more better in contextual to understand the specific problem. But in terms of the detail analysis or prediction, qualitative science has a lot of disadvantages. So that is why most of the researchers are focused on quantitative studies, and even you can see a lot of new software is coming on statistical tools or new statistical tool. Why? Because a number of people using in different context. It depends upon people or researchers that are using. Then we have sample size, and in quantitative sciences, the sample size is usually big. And how can we determine the sample size? It is we will discuss in our next topic or next slides. Whereas sample size in qualitatives is very small. I already mentioned it could be maybe 5, sometimes 2 to 3 people, also more than enough if you want a structured, detailed interview on the respondent. So the sample size is very small. Then objectives and subjective. When we take a look on quantitative, it's see precise measurement and analysis. As we know the tools, we know that SPS is involving number of tests like t-test, ANOVA, man-wide t-test. It depends upon what kind of data we have, and we need to see that, and then we need to do analysis. Whereas when we talk about qualitative, it's more about individual perception. As we know that the data from the patient or from the participant or respondent is only few, but we need to see only in-depth observation of the participant, the respondent that he or she gives. So it is quite limited, but more in depth. So that's actually is the difference between quantitative and qualitative. And actually, when we're talking about higher studies from masters and PhD, usually there are different kind of statistical tool. Usually, the researchers are in undergraduate or postgraduate. We do mutually quantitative and qualitative mixed analysis. We usually call them mixed mode method. So we do in the combination of all these things to do that analysis. So it is a combination of the all aspects. Then analysis, researcher role. You see the researcher tend to remain objectives separated from the subject matter, whereas in qualitative we have researchers tend to become subjectively immersed in the subject matter. So actually more objective in quantitative study and actually more subjective in qualitative. So that's the biggest difference in quantitative and qualitative. Objective studies is quantitative, whereas is more subjective study in qualitative. Then the analysis is also different as the quantitative, because it dealing with the stats, it dealing with the counts, it dealing with the numbers. So it is more statistical. Whereas in interpretation, and quality is more interpretation, in thought, explanation to the context. Okay, some common questions that undergraduate students ask regarding quantitative study. This is the question actually that many students will ask me, and I don't have time to explain them. Especially, I'm teaching one subject that needs some statistical analysis in another subject. So this is good if you need to know the basic thing. Number one is, what do I need to consider before starting the survey? That is the most important thing. And before starting a survey, you need to know the population. And the population is a number of questions about proposed population for survey. Like, can the population could be counted? This is the main important question. Like, for example, if a student need to do research on teachers, for example, perspective on the workload of Malaysian teachers working in government and private sector, and you need to find out that whether the workload is adequate for all the teachers in Malaysia. The question is that whether he can able to access the data, or she can able to find the data from the respondent. Or can we count the population? Do we know how many teachers currently working in Malaysia? Do we know? Because the main important thing, even before starting the research or starting the topic, we need to know some basics. We need to know the sample size. And sample size, obviously the population that a person, a student is taking, you need to see that whether that population you can access easily, you can meet them, you can see them. Or if, for example, you want to do the perception of the traditional Chinese medicine, TCM, among the common population in all around the world. You suppose that, okay, I consider worldwide evaluation on TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, perspective from maybe the consumer that are using, whether you can cover all world. No, you cannot. That's most students did the biggest mistake. They are not sure that what population that can be easily accessible for them. Research is not like that you follow the broad context, you follow all worldwide, and then you try to do analysis. It is not like that. If you know the population, you can get the access. Obviously you need to see that whether it is countable, whether the data is available, whether the previous research has been done, whether you can able to get the access. There are a number of questions that you need to see before starting the research. So the first thing that they mentioned in the slide is, can the population be counted? That's your first question. Then, are the language issue? Obviously, if we talk about Malaysian perspective, we have three main language. Obviously, English is everybody know. Then we have Bahasa. Then we have Chinese, and then we have Tamil. But we know that in Malaysia, everybody can understand English. So this in Malaysia, you have no problem. You can prepare your questions in English, and then you can send to your participants. So language is not a problem especially in Malaysia. But for example, if you want to do research on Pakistan, and we know that the education level in Pakistan is not as good as in Malaysia. The literacy rate in Pakistan is 60%, whereas in Malaysia the literacy rate is 90%. So what we have need to do, and especially if you need to focus on rural areas, because in Malaysia we know that in kampungs, we know if you go to village or kampung, we know that people still can understand English, so they can fill the form, no problem. But what about the other countries, or Pakistan, or for example India, some tribal research, where you need to collect data from small tribe? How can you get access? And then how can you understand the language, because the language is the problem. So in that case, then what is the solution for that? You need to translate your questionnaire. For example, if you want to make research on Pakistan perspective, you want to compare with Malaysian on the perspective of traditional Chinese medicine, comparison between in South Asia we have Ayurveda and Unani medicine, comparing the perception with the traditional Chinese medicine in Malaysia. Suppose this is a topic, then you need to prepare your questionnaire in Urdu, which is the official, not the official language, but rural areas people usually speak with that language. Or if, for example, you need to focus on especially tribes, then you need to make that questionnaire with their language so that they can easily reply them. And obviously the language is very important, because sometimes the context changes. If the question is in English and then you change into another language, sometimes the context changes. So it is very important that you translate with the true essence or true meaning that you want to explain. So this is very important to understand. Then we have what are the geographic restriction. Again, this is very important that when we talk about the population counted, then the last is linked with the population counted, that whether you're able to get the access. Like if, for example, you want to work on the perception of mental health issues in working conditions in Philippines, and you don't know anybody who is in Philippines, or you have no access, you don't know anybody, you cannot do the research. So usually, obviously, when you are the student and you need to do the research, you focus on location where you stand, where you have easily accessible. And most of the students, especially undergraduate students I'm talking about, they start doing their research from university level. Even when I was in different universities, I saw a lot of questionnaires students requested me to fill up, because the university undergraduate students are easily accessible. So for the student level, you can get the access easily and you can start doing your research easily. And I'm explaining you in your context. But for example, if you want to do research, again, this is very important, because if you are going to do research on master's and PhD program, will you still do the same research? That's my question. And my answer is that it is not always applicable, because when you are doing research on master's and PhD, the population is not only one university, one school. Then it could be all Malaysian universities. It will become a little bit bigger. because when we talk about quantitative study, we are talking about numbers, and the number of sample size is very important. Uh, and you have to understand then in that context that undergraduate student is very small. If you want to work on Xiamen University, we know that our university is more than 5,000 students. So, but obviously it is not for all undergraduate students. If, for example, suppose you want to do the research on all undergraduate students in Xiamen, the next question is that if you want to do only on Xiamen, whether it is sufficient enough to generalize the data. That's the question mark, because you cannot generalize to the whole population or whole Malaysian universities undergraduate students. That's the big question. That is why the researchers always encourage to collect the data from different sources, from different population. Again, this we will discuss in the sample size and sample frame later on. So that is very important to understand that for small school level research, you can do research in university just to learn how to do the research. But when we talk about masters and PhD thesis, you cannot do these type of research. You need to collect more data. You need to collect data from a wide range, a wide group of similar class of people, and then you need to do the analysis so that you can able to generalize the data. If you cannot generalize them, you just only limit it to only Xiamen University or only one university, then the research have no power. You can say that no strong evidence. And then, for example, if you want to publish them later on, you cannot able to publish them in good impact factor journals. So that is very important to understand that to understand the research, you need to follow or you need to focus on generalize more broader context when collecting the data. But again, you need to understand that whether you get access as well. If you are living in another country, suppose I'm working or studying in Malaysia, then obviously you can collect the data from other country. Like I can able to collect the data from Pakistan and Malaysia as well. But again, that's very important because you need to have more references, more people that you can easily access and counter. Although today the era, the online data sample collection is very easy nowadays. And nowadays, I take a look on a lot of easy method for data collection, like Facebook. People are collecting data through Facebook also have one of the option for advertising. So you can advertise your questionnaire, and then you can set the target population, maybe in Philippines, maybe any European country, and then the questionnaire will only get to those people, those participants. So Facebook nowadays, many people are using Facebook, and then through YouTube as well, and then through other social media platforms, you can now get access to other population. But again, this is challenging because when you are doing masters and PhD program, then you have a lot of time to do. But if you are an undergraduate student, you don't have much time, then I don't recommend to waste your time and money here. And I always suggest that you try to do the analysis, the population that you can easily target on, that you can easily get on. But again, not only one small section of the population. Try to get some clusters of different population. That will be the perfect way to do the research. And obviously that is challenging if you want to do. So I hope so you are listening my sound. Can you able to hear my sound? Any issues? Please do text me and mention in the comment box. If any single issues, please do let me know. Then next is moving ahead to the next point, which is sampling. And it is very important. And when we talk about sampling, I mentioned that the sample is a section of the wider population that will be engaged in the survey. And sampling is the process identifying who you aiming to contact from that population. So this is very important. Again, I already discussed a little bit that the sample size, sampling, which people, which population, and in population there are different kind of people. And when we talk about that, whether we need to see that whether we can focus on, for example, in population, we talk about Malaysia, we have doctors, we have physicians, we have pharmacists, we have traditional Chinese medicine practitioners, Suppose in the health structure we have these four basic pillars. Then we have nurses as well, and you want to do research on nurses, pharmacists, doctors. Whether you want to do the research on, obviously, the intention. For example, I give one topic, that intention to adopt a electronic health record from either one of these health professionals. You can select all of them. Is it possible? No, it is not possible. That is a big important thing, that you cannot say that, okay, I am very motivated. Yes, we can do research. Okay, let's start. Let's do all health professionals. And you are very motivated. Students are usually very motivated. Okay, I have my friends here. I can take help from them. Okay, I can get help from this person. Okay, I am the TCM practitioner. I can get a lot of respondent from them. I know one pharmacist friend. Okay, I can get. But in actual sense, when you start doing the collecting the data, will you able to get the data? No. I tell you one interesting thing, that I was doing one research on Pakistan perspective on about consumer satisfaction of the available pharmacies in one of the provinces in Pakistan. And you know what happened? I spent 6 months, more than 6 months, to collect just 480 response. Can you imagine? 6 months to take, and I am only focus on consumer perspective, where I need to fill the form from the consumers. So consumer could be public. Even still, I found so much difficulty to collect the data, and still I'm working on the analysis of that paper. So you can see that how much difficult to collect the data on that perspective. I am unable to get a lot of data, because if, for example, you have to understand that you're doing research not only for just passing your exam and just get the thesis and just finish your degree. The things are bigger than that, because the piece of paper doesn't matter for you. Now everybody, undergraduate students, are doing so much good research, so much high quality research, that they're publishing even before getting graduate. So please, you have to be very careful that publication, although is very important part of your CV if you want to do for higher education, for your getting scholarships. Students unable to understand this important, but again, I leave this. I always lift the hand now. I don't give these assignment before, but before I try to do some small effort just for systematic review, but students don't know the basics. So again, I just leave the hand. Okay. So now I just giving just basic concept and case studies, but again, this is the part of your research. So you have to understand that it is not easy possible. You have to think, you have to find a population, you have to see that whether you can get the data. I mentioned in this slide, it is very important. Sampling process, how you contact them. I mentioned 4 questions. Who is your respondent? Suppose healthcare structure you want to focus on. Doctors, pharmacists, physicians, TCM practitioners, nurses. You cannot take all of them. You can take one of them. Easy for you. Don't make your life tough. Then what is your sample frame? We will discuss this later on. What is sample frame later on? Are the responses likely to be problem? How to calculate a statistical significance? We will discuss all of them later on. But these are the 4 important questions that you need to understand and think, and then start doing research. So please, you have to be very careful when you're doing research. And hi everybody, I get some response again and asking the question from one of the person, Chow, and he is asking the question. I got a question, sir. If the research were to interview a large amount of subjects, is it considered as qualitative or quantitative? And my answer is that it is actually a quantitative study. If I already mentioned that, this is the question. Actually, this is our topic today. That if we have large data size, then we need to do quantitative study. And I will, in my slides, if you take a look, I will explain you, because the sampling size, sampling frame is very important. And how much data you need to collect, that's the question. And I tell you very interesting thing again from German perspective, because I usually talk with the students and discuss with them. I don't remember the name of the student, but when he's not in TCM, he's in the other school, and he's doing the statistical quantitative study, and I asked that how much sample frame you have, how much it means that how many respondent you have, and he have only, I think, less than 100 people. And I asked few questions regarding the basics of the research, and he don't know. And again, that's why I'm telling you here, please, if you are a student, you want to do master's PhD, and you are interested to do research, And the sample size, sample frame, respondents, these all information you must know. You must collect the data. Then writing the thesis is obviously compulsory, but publishing it is important for you. And I tell you, a lot of high top ranked universities, they're publishing their articles. Even in Zaman University, not in our department like PCM or management science, I saw one or two good high impact factor publications from other departments like chemical engineering, new energy department. So their students are publishing it. So you have to understand that it is very important to understand at this perspective, this actually research or this actually today's topic is about you so that you understand the basics. So we will discuss and then later on. So thank you so much for asking a question. You can ask more question using ask a question. And if you have any question, you can ask anytime. And you can share this webinar to your friends because you can watch them again after if you have not get access, if somebody have problem. Okay, next slide, we'll move on. I'm very slow, but it is very important. I'm slow, but I have to explain you. Who is the respondent? I already mentioned that if the survey is distributed inside the university campus, which particular will be filling the form? This is an important question, especially for undergraduate students. If, for example, you want to work on either you want to focus on only teacher perspective, like I saw some of the question is I saw online asking the teaching load of the teachers or workload of the teachers in Zaman University. I saw this one of the question is, so this is a good topic because they focus on the only on professors and lecturers, or you want to focus on only undergraduate students. But again, the core problem is that at undergraduate level, only Zaman University, you take the data is good for you to learn, but it's not good enough to publish a good paper. If even your data size is very limited to only one section, you can able to publish it, but not in high impact factor journals or good reputed journals. You face a lot of difficulty. So this is very important to understand that try to collect data as much as you could. How much we will discuss in our next slide. Then I mentioned that do you want to specify who the survey to be completed? Yes, this is another question that when you're able to give the questionnaire, sometimes what happened, the question is blank. Mean they just ask a question, there is no introduction. Then you give to one people, he don't know what to about. So sometimes it is very important to give the introduction, basic information that what you want to do, what is the objective of that survey, who will fill this form. So I saw most of the survey that people try to fill is just lack of information. They just ask the question without having access or available clear information. So this is very problematic. So when you need to do research, please mention in the introduction or make one paragraph what you are planning to do, what is your objective. Or for example, there are some more detail, like for example, somebody have made a theoretical model and then model having some construct like factors, and then you need to ask the question regarding these factors. So this is another separate research, but again, you need to give some information so that the respondent will know. And the more better thing that actually nobody do is making a video. So for example, you want to give the questionnaire to anybody, you prepare a small video on what you want to do, and then you share the video and then with the questionnaire, then it will be better for you get more better and more quality research. So this is very important. And the third thing that is very important, like sometime if you are using the terminologies too complex, you can say that if, for example, I use medical terms in the question is whether you can able to understand. If a layman, no, a layman can never understand the medical terms. So this is very problematic. So the main important thing is that who is respondent? If the respondent is literate, illiterate, educational, rural, urban, what kind of information he have or she have. If you are giving the questionnaire that people that don't know the about specific terms, then you cannot solve the questionnaire. Then what happen if you give them randomly? He will, for example, we have Likert scale like most likely, least likely, neutral, and he just click okay, most likely, or he click most unlikely. He select all, okay, that's it, and submit. So whether then you get good results? No, you cannot get a good response because then they will be biased in the research, and then when you do the analysis, you face a lot of problem because there are some bias analysis for the biasness, and then you have to justify that why he did not get response. Then you have to justify because maybe your question is too complicated or too difficult to answer. So that is very important, that the language is easy, not complex, is very simple and to the point. So that is very important when you design the questionnaire. Then the next is what is your sample frame? Again, this is very important, very important, because I saw especially in here in our university, nobody take a look on this sampling frame. And sampling frame is the list of the members of the population from which member of the sample data selected. So they are actually different kind of sampling methods. We can say simple words that how you collect the data. It is not like that you ask your friend, okay, to fill this form, then you ask your friend to fill this form, and then you ask your third friend to forward this form to the fourth one. Yes, this is possible. I'm not saying that this is not possible. This is possible, but when you need to write your thesis, you need to explain the method. And when you need to explain the methodology, you need to mention that what type of method you have used. Like I mentioned that you ask your friend to fill it, then your friend help you to fill further forms, then your further friends help to fill further forms. It is actually the method known as convenience sampling. If you take a look of this slide, random sampling, systematic sampling, stratified sampling, and the fourth one is convenience sampling. Means it depends upon your convenience that you can get easily access to get the data. But if you want to finish your just undergraduate thesis, okay, you just follow the convenience sampling. Master's level, you can follow the convenience sampling. But again, I suggest that when you want to do higher studies, masters, especially PhD, you need to have some novelty, and then you need to find some novel sampling method. Like the commonly used is convenience sampling because easily to get the data. But we talk about the other sampling methods are random sampling method, systematic method, or stratified sampling. These are other kind of sampling method. And next slide is going to explain all of these. When you take a look of simple random sample, you see that from figure A, you see you collecting that part data from maybe 1, then you collect the data from 4th participant, then you collect data from 7, then you collect data from 9, then 11. So you collecting the data randomly from the population. And then how you collect the data randomly? There are different softwares like random.com. There is one software website actually. And for example, you know that your sample size is 350, suppose 250 or 350, and then you have the data. That is very important. Like I already mentioned, the population counted, you know the population. You have the data. For example, you need to collect the data from the doctors. So you know that, okay, this is the list that I get from the registration councils. There are different councils. Pakistan have their own councils. Malaysian have their own councils. You can get the data from their councils, list of the doctors. So, okay, you have the list of the doctors, you have the email address. Okay, right. That is very important. Now you make the Excel sheet, and then you assign them numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Mean you have a list of, for example, 4,000 doctors. But among the 4,000 doctors, you are only focused on especially one province. Like, for example, you want to work on the doctors are TCM practitioners of the Selangor or Sipang. So suppose your data you get is 300, suppose. So you just assign them 300, suppose. And then you need to do the pilot testing, which is meant by the small scale testing for only 50 people. You put the number 50 in the software, or I already mentioned the websites, and then they randomly find, okay, number 21. So you then approach to that number 21 participant, and then you email them, and then you send them, okay, please fill this form. So that's one of the random sampling method, that you get the data, you randomly assign people and you ask them to fill the form through random way, not choosing like, okay, you're going to ask this one to fill this form, or you're just not asking that people to fill your form. So randomly collect the data, and then you get the data, because the random sampling is more better than convenient sampling, because there will be more accuracy of the results regarding, and there will be less bias regarding. Then do we have systematic sampling? And if you take a look of the second picture, it is more systematic way, like you take the even numbers 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 18, you on so on. So you only select the data from even numbers, or you select the data from odd numbers. So this is the systematic way to get the data. Then we have stratified sample, where we divided two groups. Like if you see blue and green, you know the population. You divide the population into two groups, maybe on the basis of gender, maybe on the basis of your topic that you want to design, or maybe divided on the basis of the treatment. And then you, from that sample, from one section, you ask to fill that questionnaire. Then the second one is the second group, you ask them randomly to get the data. So stratified sampling is, how can we differentiate stratified sample with simple random? Simple random is just one population, one group. There is no subdivision. That group containing maybe two type of population, male or female both, suppose. Whereas stratified, you separate male and female separate, and then randomly collect the data. So that's the big difference. Then we have fourth one, which is cluster sampling. You divide the population into maybe 4 and 5 groups, and then you take one cluster of one population, and in that population maybe the male female are mixed, both are available, but you just select one cluster and you just name them cluster A, cluster B, C, or maybe you make a cluster on the basis of the demographic data, specific data related to specific area or population. So this is very important to understand that there are different techniques of data collection, and it is, if even you need to do convenience sampling, it is possible, you can do, but you need to explain in the methodology why you do convenience sampling. Maybe right now, why? Because for example, we are under MCO, conditional movement order. Now we cannot approach, we cannot able to collect the data, it is difficult for us. Then you have a justification. Or for example, the population is hard to reach. What is meant by hard to reach? It is difficult to get. Like for example, in Pakistan, when we talk about some of the provinces are quite far from one location, and you cannot get access easily, or because of the political condition in some of the provinces is not possible, so you can justify. But in Malaysia, when we talk about Malaysia, for example, you want to work on undergraduate students in Malaysia. If I take this example, it is not difficult for you to go to the universities. You can get the data easily from the universities in Malaysia. Or you want to work on only in Selangor or Sepang universities, it is possible. You can work on only specific province. Maybe you can, if you are from Kada, you can work from only the population from the Kada. If you want to work on for example, Perlis, Selangor, Johor Bahru, Terengganu, or Kelantan, you can select one province and you can get the data. It is possible. If, for example, you have, and you can justify in your thesis that why I cannot able to get the data from the other provinces, maybe because the population is hard to reach, unable to get the data because of the nature of your research. So it depends. So then in our next slide, I already mentioned the convenience sampling, that how can you get the data from easily. You can ask your friends to fill the form and you can fill it easily. This is actually very important. Always students ask me these questions actually, that how many response I needed. That's the biggest problem, that students ask me this and they don't know that how they calculate the sample size. So this is very important, and I am going to share you the title of the paper as well. You can just download that paper online. It is available as well, freely available. So I am sharing the title of that paper, so you can download that as well, and I will show you as well, which is determining the sample size and how to calculate the survey sample size. And if you take a look of this question, this table actually, the main thing is that you can see that population size from starting from 50 to 75 to 100. I'm not going to tell all, but last you can say 50,000, 10 million, 1 million, more than different population size. And for example, if you want to focus on especially the population, I talk you about the population of Pakistan is, we have to go to the last level, last. So I mean, you, for example, again, that's why I'm telling you that you don't need to do the worldwide research. You need to follow. You need to see that what population you're targeting, how much total population it have. For example, we want to work on traditional Chinese medicine practitioners in Malaysia. So do you know how many TCM practitioners working in Malaysia? I need to ask this question from you. If we have 2 students from TCM right now online, do you know? You don't know. If, for example, I ask for you that how many doctors working in Malaysia, you don't know. How can you found? The answer is that you need to search the literature online. There are already people working on different populations, and you can get the data from the literature from scholarsgoogle.com, and you can find that figure. But the important thing is that the figure must be latest, not 20 years old, 10 years old, because the data keep updating every years or every 2 years or every 5 years. So please get the data latest. For example, if you want to work on undergraduate students right now in Malaysia, how many teachers are working in Malaysia, or how many physicians or doctors working in Malaysia. Again, I'm talking only Malaysian perspective, because it is not easy that you follow, okay, I need to do worldwide all TCM practitioners. It is impossible, even if you want to do PhD. So you have to be very realistic, but you can get the data. So suppose if you know that population, how many, which you get from the literature, then you need to see this table. So for example, if for example, I just taking one example of one population size is 50, then you see on the right side, we have the variance of population 50% and the confidence level. So please remember, there are 2 type of confidence level. One is 95 and the second one is 99%. And some people use 95%, some people use 99%. This table, I just give you one example for 99% confidence level. You can ask me that which one is better, 95 or 99. Obviously 99% will be better, so that's why I put you the better one. But you can see that the margin of error, you can see is 531. So you can see that if the margin of error is 1, then you need to get data more. So the low margin of error, more you need to get the data. For 50 size population, you need to get the data from 50 people. So that margin of error is only 1. But if you need to get that data from 49 or 46, then the margin of error become high from 3 to 5. So that is very important. And I'm going to share this paper as well. I'm going to open it and show you. Just let me share the link. Okay, I hope you can take a look. You can able to see my slide. I'm going to zoom it in just 1 minute. Okay, so if you take a look of this paper, I'm not going to show you completely, but I'm just going to show you that this table 1, here you can see the confidence level is 95. And if you take a look of population size, for example, I'm going at the end, 25,000, 50,000, then we can see 10 million population. And in 10 million population, and the margin of level, the minimum data you need to collect is 384 with 5 margin of error, confidence level 95. And suppose you want to work on all healthcare professional in Malaysia, it's obviously the data is around 10 million. Around 10 million, maybe, okay, half million. Still, you need to get 384. Okay, you need to go less. Okay, for example, 25,000. Still, you need to get 375, 378. Okay, we go again, 5,000, again 350. So the most important thing that is very important that at least if even you have population size of 50, 500, 5,000, 10,000, around data is around 350 to 380. This is, you can see that on average with 95% confidence level interval, and then margin of error is 5. But this is the weakest data that you need to get. But in actual practice, when students want to do the research, they hardly get the data from maybe 10 people, 100 participants, and then they just write their thesis and just finish. And when they try to publish them, no, they will not get accepted, because this 350 data is the minimum data. If you have this population size around 5,000 to 10,000, obviously you can have more and more, but the data reliability is lowest. But if you go in the same slide, if you take a look, okay, the table 2 that I'm talking about, this table 2, and this is for 99 level confidence level, and we take a look of, okay, 5,000, then the data for 5 margin of error and 99% confidence level is 583. Suppose, and for example, okay, you know that you are unable to get the data because, okay, if the margin of error is 3, then 1,342. If the margin of error is 1, then 388 data, and if data is sometimes unable to get. But okay, 99 confidence interval you cannot able to achieve, but you want to focus on, again, same 5,000 for 5,000 for 95. So okay, at least 3,879 for margin of error 3. So you can able to understand that you need to get a big data at least to prove your objectives or what you want to do, because this is a quantitative search. This is not a qualitative research that you need to get. Small sample size, maybe 10 interviews, 20 interviews. Okay, just asking structured questions, qualitative analysis. But the qualitative analysis, the analysis is quite different. It is not same. So you need to understand this thing, that is the different type of research needs different requirements. So you have to understand this thing. So let me back to my slides. Okay. So this is very important to understand, that the sample size you need to calculate, and I already sent the link to you. Then, are the response rate is likely to be problematic? Yes, response rate is problematic, because I already mentioned you that sample size, if you just need to, even a small research, even if you want to do, okay, not this level, but for your master's level, you want to, obviously you want to do your thesis in your master's or PhD, you need to get at least 384 data. And 384 collection is not an easy. So again, this question, that are response rate likely to be problem, again, is back to my previous slides, population accessible, whether you can get easily access to that population or not. So please be careful when you design your research or your experiment. Focus on your strength, and please, you must know your limitations before doing anything. So this is very important, so that you will not fall this problem at the end. Again, I'm telling you my experience, that sometimes you face a lot of problem, you cannot unable to get the data, but there are some tricks. There's some way to collect the data. We need to have like using social media platform. But again, the problem is that if you're using social media platform, the data collection or the sampling frame will be different. Maybe it will be more convenient sampling, but Facebook, using Facebook to collect the data, or social media, you can use another method, which is known as snowball sample. What is snowball? I'm actually, this is not related to my topic, so I'm not explaining you. But please, you have to understand in generally that the sample frame you must know. You must know that which sample frame will be easy for you to get, but you need to see that if the convenience sampling you're using, then maybe your data may be not strong enough, and maybe there will be some bias, and then you need to address the bias, that how you address the bias in your research. So this is very important. I'm moving very fast. How to calculate the statistical significance? Uh, it is important to understand that there are different type of survey formats, and there are two commonly survey formats that has been used. One is cross-sectional survey, and second one is longitudinal survey. And when we take a look of the definition of the cross-section survey, it is defined as it is used to gather the information on a population at a single point of time. Example of cross-section survey would be a questionnaire that collects the data on a people's experience of a particular initiative or event. A cross-sectional survey might try to determine the relationship between two factors like the impact of program of activity on the level benefit claim. Again, this is two definition you may not able to understand. I will give you one example. Then the longitudinal survey gather the data over a period of time. So the main thing, you don't need to see the all definition in detail. The difference between cross-sectional survey and longitudinal survey: cross-sectional survey is only getting the data at single point of time, at one time, whereas longitudinal will be mentioned gather the data over a period of time. Maybe you get the data after maybe 1 month or 2 months. So the time will be more than one time. So that's the main difference between cross-section and longitudinal survey. I'm going to share you 1-2 papers, and I'm going to quickly move ahead. For example, this paper, the knowledge and attitude practice toward COVID-19 among the Chinese residents during the rapid rise of COVID-19 outbreak, a quick online cross-sectional survey. And if I'm going to share you this paper, and then I will show you that what is their methodology. So let me share you that paper. Just wait a while. Okay, now you can able to see this paper, and I'm going to show you just the methodology. And if you take a look of this methodology, you can see that this cross-sectional survey was conducted from January 27 to February 1, the week immediately after the lockdown of Hubei province. Because it was not feasible to do community-based national sampling survey during this period, we decided to collect the data online, relying on the authors network with people living in Hubei. Again, this is paper is they are talking about, and they mention very clearly. They mention very clearly that this is a cross-section survey, and the time frame they already mentioned that from 27 January to 1 February. So this is a time frame. This is only one time frame, and then they mentioned that they get the data online, but they have not mentioned that this is convenience sampling. They just mentioned that they rely on the network. So this is one of the disadvantage of this article that published. Please remember, this is important. When you need to publish in high impact factor, you must know the methodology in detail. If you just write this line like we decided to collect data from online relying on a network, okay, it means that this article is not published in good journal. Again, I already checked that this article is published in one journal, but not reputed journal, not high impact factors. Published, but not high impact, because they mentioned to explain the whole line that the network with local people who buy one network. No, just mention, if he just mentioned just mention convenience sampling, this whole line, he don't need to write this, or she don't need to write this. So the simple thing in that is just mention convenience sampling, and the whole meaning would be explained. So that's the trick, that if you want to publish in high impact factor, you must know the terminology, you must know the technical words, the terms, random sampling, convenience sampling, stratified sampling, which sampling method you use, sampling frame you use, rather than you write in detail about how you get the data. So please, this is very important. If you just write convenience sampling, okay, the reviewer no, okay, this is convenience sampling, no, okay, go ahead, move ahead. So please, you have to understand. And again, the time frame is one time frame. That's right. Now I'm showing you another article. If you take a look of my next slide, and I'm going to go show you awareness of the changes in e-cigarette regulation and the behavior before and after implementation. So if you take a look of this one, very clearly they mention the time, mean before and after. They mention that the awareness about the e-cigarette regulations. So obviously they take the data before rules and regulation implementation. This is one time frame, and the second time frame is after the implementation, and then they did the survey. So I'm not going to show you again the whole paper again, but you can download by yourself by taking the snapshots, or you already have the access of my data. But you can see that two time frames. So that is why this is longitudinal survey. And problem is that students don't know this cross-sectional survey, longitudinal survey, and they just write up article. They collect the data. Okay, they did a lot of job, but when they need to write an article, they're unable to write the article. They just write in just their own language. So in statistical research, in the quantitative or social sciences, we have some specific terminologies. Like I have not mentioned the other methodologies. This is two journal, cross-sectional and longitudinal is the most commonly used survey methods. But this is not live. When you do epidemiology studies, we have randomized clinical trials, non-randomized clinical trials. Then we have so many. There are maybe I think more than 50 types of survey designs, and every survey designs have the different meanings. So for your level, for undergraduate level, you just need to know that at least these in social sciences we use cross-sectional and the longitudinal survey system, but there are so many others we are not going to discuss in this topic, but this is very important to understand. Then how to design a questionnaire. I'm going very fast. We already spent I think 1 hour and 15 minutes, so I'm going very fast. The questions you must need to know what type of questions can be asked, how questions can be complex, will the screening will be needed, can question can be sequenced, will the lengthy questions be asked, how long will the long response scale up. So the main important thing that these are the important things you need to address. I'm going to move ahead. How to design a questionnaire. The important thing is that type of questions, that is very important. And there are 6 main type of questions. One is Likert scale or sliding scale. Second is ranking scale. The third one is drop-down questionnaire. Fourth one is open-ended. Fifth one is demographic, and sixth one is image choice. And we take a look of sliding scale or Likert scale. Actually, both are same. Just the difference of the sliding scale, you just slide it down using your mouse or using your touch pen. You just slide. So that's why. But the Likert scale and sliding scale both are same. And it's usually like the questions like poor, fair, good, very good, and excellent. So this is known as Likert scale. When we take a look of the ranking scale, we have actually 2 ranks. Like in this question, likely, not likely. So we will assign the question in 2 ranks, and we ask them likely or unlikely, and that's actually is known as ranking scale. For example, how likely you recommend for this company to your friends. So likely and unlikely, they are 2 ranks. And between them, there are different numbers from 0 to 10. So this is the ranking scale. Then we have drop-down questionnaires. For example, for demographic data, like what is your age, you assign the questions from under 18, 18 to 24, and so on, and then you drop down which one is suitable. Then we have open-ended questionnaires, like you ask the questions like, for example, what changes does your company need to get high ratings? You just leave it open-ended, means the respondent need to answer them by what they think. And actually the open-ended questions are more linked to qualitative studies. So sometimes in the questionnaire, or you can say when you make a questionnaire, you put quantitative and qualitative both in one research. So that is why in open-ended questions, mostly they are structured questions and for the qualitative analysis. So it looked like this way. Then we have demographic questions. Then we have image choice questions, where you put up image and ask for questions. So there are different ways to get the data. Then I'm going now very fast because the time limitation. Then how we select the survey? The selecting the type of survey, it's very crucial because we need to know that how we can get the data. Now I mentioned postal surveys. Like in the past, when we don't have online system, people send the questionnaires, they survey through post, and then they reply, and they give them the stamps. Even they put insert some stamp, and then they ask, please fill the form and please submit back. Then telephone survey came, where you ask the questionnaires through telephone. Then email and internet survey, now the most common way to ask the questionnaire. Then the fourth one is the street survey, administrative survey, that you go street by street and ask the questions. When we take a look of pros and cons of both of them, pros and cons is like that postal can reach to a large geographical area, no doubt, but problem is that maybe you take many years to fill that form. Then people are used to complete paper and pencil survey. Obviously, with postal survey, it is more physical work, and then the getting the data and collecting data is very tough and great for sensitive issues. So postal is good in that context where some of the you are addressing the issues like the racism, ethnic issues. In that context where you don't want that people will fear of leaking the data, maybe online service. Sometimes some people are fear of. So for sensitive issues, for racial issues, for ethnic issues, postal service is good. But the problem is that motivation, lack of motivation, because people don't fill them and you not get a response. And usually the response rate is very low for this kind of research. Then telephone, it is good because you can get the data immediately. But the problem is that whoever calling or getting data may be possible biases, and it is very difficult to address the bias in telephone type of studies. Then email and internet nowadays is quite common because distribution cost is finished now, and the data can be get easily, answer can be get easily, then additional information can be get. So again, this is good, but they have some cons. Obviously the respondent must be online, but now it is possible because everybody have their mobile, must use a computer, mouse or keyboard. But now it is not, this point is not valid because I think this book is outdated, because now mobile is everybody have the access. Respondent must able to use the web browser. Now this is also outdated because now mobile has been accessed. So this table actually I think outdated because the book is written outdated. But I prefer that internet and email will be better because you can get the data very fast, and everybody have their mobile or laptop nowadays. How it should be analyzed? Again, there are list of software. So we have Excel, SPSS, Stata, SAS, Minitab. These softwares are actually more on quantitative. For Excel, SPSS, Stata, and SAS, they are more quantitative. But every statistical tool have their different perspective. The best one, if you ask from me, is recommended. I use SPSS, and SPSS is better because you can get large. You can do the analysis very easily. You can gather the data large quantity. You can do the survey, and you have a lot of easy to do. Whereas Stata is less recommended because it is more linked to programming a language. So there are different kind of softwares, but the SPSS will be the most common one. In the last week, you can see the two other softwares, which is NVivo and Atlasti. It is used for qualitative studies. If you need to understand or you need to know that how you need to use them softwares, you can ask from me later on. Maybe we can have the separate session for that. Then when we talk about statistical analysis, it is a mathematical method of interrogating the data. And this can be done by the looking at the relationship between different set of data. And statistical analysis will be complex, and following sections aims to explore some of the basic considerations to an audience without assuming mathematical background. So actually these softwares are using to help people if even they don't know the mathematics or detail. There are two types of statistics. One is descriptive statistics, and second one is inferential statistics. And when we talk about descriptive statistics, we have actually the data which will be observed in the form of numbers, numerical, like the frequency or the demographic data can be get from descriptive statistics. Whereas inferential statistics is actually more like a predictive, and what could be observed or what will be observed. It's more like an inferential statistics. We will discuss in later on. And before you need to do statistics, you need to know the variables and inferences. When we talk about the variables, you need to know that there are different kind of variables that need to be measured in quantitative studies, such as ordinal, interval, ratio. Whereas for qualitative variable, usually we use a nominal scale. So what is the difference between them? The ordinal scale is more like the scale that start from strongly agreed, agreed, neutral, disagree, or to disagree. The main thing in ordinal scale is that we know the ranks, we know there is a rank, but we don't know. You can say that the between strongly agree and agree, we don't know the difference between different levels. So they are not homogenized, or you can say they are not synchronized. Strongly agree, neutral, disagree, strongly disagree. We have positive factors, we have negative. As if you take a look of the green part is more positive and the red zone is negative. So the interval between strongly agree and agree is not constant, or is not measurable. So that is the ordinary scale. When we talk about interval scale, in the interval scale, it is more synchronized. Mean the temperature, for example, 0 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30, 30 to 40, 40 to 50. The intervals will be equal. So we know the scale between 0 to 10 is between them how many degrees we have, 10 to 20 how many degrees we have, and so on. Whereas when we talk about ordinal scale, we have the categories like strongly agree and agree, but we cannot measure them. The interval cannot be measurable, so that's why we call them as an ordinal scale, whereas temperature is considered as interval scale. Then also we have nominal scale, and nominal scale we asking what is your gender and what is your hair color, where we ask them the question in terms of the name. It is more specific, and it is, if you take a look of the word, is nominal. The word come from the name. So it is more, it is not like a Richter scale or not like an interval scale. It more look like you asking a particular question and you answering the answer, and that's why it is also used for qualitative study. What do I need to consider? Again, some of the more variables, and there is a range of variables need to be understood, like dependent variable or independent variable. Then we have control variable or continuous variable or discrete. So they all are different kind of variables in terms to understand. And when we talk about continuous variable, the common example is in this case is your height or your weight. I mentioned that a variable which can have any numerical value. It means that the weight could be 20.2, or if 60.1, 60.2. It is a continuous variable, and that can be measurable at any point of time and any value. And the weight and the height are the common example. When we talk about discrete variable, it is expressed in terms of numbers like 0 or 1, like flipping of the coin. So we know that head and tail. So 0 or 1, and how many house in one society or in one colony. So the discrete value is always in 1 or 2 or 0 in terms of the numbers. Whereas in continuous variable, we have 1 or 1.1 or 1.2. So it is continuous, whereas discrete variable is in terms of integers. Then we have independent variable, dependent variable, and control variable. And if you take a look of this flower, and you can get an example very easily. For example, independent variable, the liquid actually which is using is actually the known as the independent variable. So maybe the fertilizer, if somebody using for the growth of that plant, and that fertilizer or that drink is the independent variable. Whereas the dependent variable is the change caused by the independent variable, and the independent variable produces the change in the dependent variable. So we have the example like the growth of the plant is the height of the plant, or the health of the plant. For example, leaf structures, you take the diameter of the leaf, you take the height of the leaf, the height of the plant. So this is the dependent variable, whereas the juice or the fertilizer or any material are independent variables. Then we have also control variables, like for example the environment, like type of fertilizer, type of soil, type of pot, sunlight. So they are control variable. Like for example, if somebody is doing research on greenhouse, so we control the environment, and then you use these control variables, or you remain these variable constant. You keep them constant and then do the analysis. So you must know different kind of variables, whether they are dependent or independent. Then what we do need to consider, the important thing is that in inferential statistics, you need to understand about the population, and you need to know the set of individual item or data and your sample size. So for inferential data, you must know the sample size, sample frame, and I already mentioned that the confidence interval, because I already mentioned if the confidence interval is 95 or 99%, the inferential analysis or to interpretation of the analysis will be slightly different. So the better will be the 99% confidence interval, but if the data collection or sample is less, then the confidence interval will be low, and margin of error is also important, that whether the margin of error is 1 or 3 or 5. So these all will impact on your overall results of your finding. Then for more complex statistics, there is a need of a wide range of statistics. But the two questions that you need to ask: what kind of data you have collected? I already discussed whether data is ordinal, nominal, or discrete. What variable you are looking to establish a relationship? Again, the variables are very important. Whether you need to see the dependent variable or independent variable, or the effect of dependent variable on the independent variable, or there are different kind of other variables like moderating or mediating variables. What is moderating or what is mediating, we will discuss in our next webinar, because you need to know the theoretical model, how to design the theoretical model, and how to design the hypothesis. That need a separate webinar for that. So we will discuss in detail more in our upcoming webinar. But you need to know the relationship between dependent or independent, like the effect of age with height, like your blood pressure with the heart rate. So you need to understand that what kind of variables, and then they are also sometimes co-variables, co-founding variables, which co-founding variables are actually indirectly affecting the dependent variable. Again, this is again the whole, we need to have a separate webinar or different kind of these variables and factors and relationships, and we will discuss them in our next lecture. So there are two families for testing. Even you are a layman, you don't know about research, there are two type of tests. One is parametric test and non-parametric test. And the main thing for parametric test, it is important, you need to see your data whether it is uniform or not uniform. If your data is uniform in uniform scale, like for example, if you take a look of my last picture, we spread the data on low performers, mid performers, and the distribution of the data is normal. The distribution of the chart or flow of diagram is normal. Like low performance we have less, than mid performance we have more, and then high performance is low. So this is a normal distribution. If the frequency, or you can say the normal distribution in your data, then you will do the parametric test. And we have some other examples like flipping of the coin, or rolling the dice, or the baby weight. They are all considered as the in the parametric test. Whereas when we talk about non-parametric test, we have like ordinal data, like Richter scale data. So when the question is designed like a Richter scale, sliding scale, or the data will be like ordinal data, like hot and spice, where we don't know that the extent, we don't know the obviously the range between the one item or one response to the other response, or between different scales, and then we do non-parametric test. And what kind of tests we need to do for parametric test? We need to do mean, standard deviation, t-test, ANOVA, and then we have Pearson correlation, regression analysis like linear and non-linear. Whereas when we need to do non-parametric test, we need to do median, in quartile range, Spearman correlation, Wilcoxon test, Mann-Whiteley test, Quashal, Wallace test, and Friedman test. So we need to know that whether your data is normally distributed or not normally distributed. That is very important to find it, and then how you do this test. You can do this test using SPSS or Excel. Then the last one is the interview. How can we get the data? So through interview, this is one of the qualitative methods to get the data. And we already mentioned that it is classified as structured, semi-structured, or unstructured data. And it is classified, if you take a look of structured data, we have specific sets of data that work through systematic way, and researchers wish to ask the questions from directly, whereas semi-structured is more like that specific set of data but having some flexibility. Not it's a semi-structured data, where unstructured data, the data does not have any set of questions and asking randomly from the researchers. But the problem is that although we get a lot of data, but again the validity of the data is not known. This is one example of the semi-structured data I taken from one of the slides. It's just like, for example, how do you perform this task? Why you perform this task? What condition you perform the task? Why you perform this task? To whom you communicate? What is your intention to do? What happened after that? What is the result of that consequence? So this is just like this example of semi-structured interview that usually these questions like. And this is one of the paper that I found, one for example of herbal medicine for women views knowledge and interaction with doctors, a qualitative study. So if you want to do the qualitative study, I will share you this paper, and you can use these papers to see that how the qualitative analysis will be do. I will share this paper to you. Okay, I will share this paper later on because I am unable to get it. I will share this paper later on. Then for inferences, if working with inferential statistics, you need to have sound interaction. I already discussed this thing before. What are the things that is required for inferential statistics? You need to know the sample size and sample size population. So thank you so much for today's lecture. Our next webinar will be on the developmental of hypothesis and theoretical model. How we will design the hypothesis and how we will design the construct or theoretical model, because the model, a theoretical model, consists of different variables and factors, and they always have a relationship. So to understand the statistics, you need to understand the relationship between different variables, and that help to design your proposal more profound, more accurate, because a random survey using cross-sectional study or longitudinal study, it just give you an idea of an event at one time or at different times. But for more deep understanding of the knowledge of that questionnaire regarding the instrument and regarding the model behind that is more important, and designing the hypothesis and then interpretation of the results with that hypothesis using statistical tool is more important. So there is a strong link between the model, hypothesis, and then the statistical tool, and along with the sample. So this is actually second step to understand the research more in detail. So we will discuss in our next lecture. So thank you so much. I think this is a long, quite hard lecture. We have, I think, spent 1 hour and around 30 minutes. So I know it's even tough for me to present, and I get exhausted later on. So I need to ask the question from you. I'm going to see that whether you are online. Let's see if you can come on the screen. So I'm inviting some students to come on the screen if they can come. So if you can able to come on the screen, I have invited you. Can you come on the screen? Is it possible?
Uh, Hi, Dr. Aslam.
Hello,
Hello.
how are you?
I'm been great. But after so now we are still like having this and also currently we are still having online lectures.
Mhm. So how about experience of today's webinar? Any comment?
I find it that like there's a lot of structure regarding to even just to write research papers. So at first I thought it's very easy. So now I find
No,
it.
no, no. It is quite difficult. This is complete science.
Yeah, yeah, Dr. Aslam, because for the question I previously asked, actually, I wanted to ask, it's like, let's say if, because I remember you mentioned that interviewing those subjects is considered to be a qualitative.
Interview considered as qualitative, but again, interview, you ask me that how many people response. So
If
usually in qualitative sciences we have less number of response.
uh,
So,
so
but
bef-
there is no fix at how many, because for quantitative we know that response. I already shared with you one table that how many response you required for how
so
much confidence interval.
it's like
So
the less the less error to achieve the least error. I saw the table. Yeah.
yeah, so actually this is very important because what happened that when I see students, they just fill the form from 100 people or 150 people, and then they just write the thesis and they just submit. Okay,
Uh,
you do it, you just do this, you finish your thesis or final year project, and that's it, but there is no output.
Oh, but if I were to do a qualitative, so the table doesn't have to be required.
Yeah, for qualitative, I will check again. I will check again and see that how many. But actually, I think you can get. I think 10 and 20. I saw most papers. This is
That's
actually
great.
qualitative is more like the interview questions. What you want to ask. Well, in the last slide, if you take a look of my last slide, I mentioned that there are different kind of questions you ask. So structured interview is more like a sequence. You ask one question, then the people will respond, then you have another question. There is in a sequence, systematic way. There is a link of your second question with the first question. Then your third question is linked to your second. So there is a structure behind that. Whereas semi-structure is not like linked with the previous question, but they just like why, who, whatever. Mean they is a general context question. Whereas unstructured is more random. Qualitative studies now, it's not easy nowadays. You can get the data, but you need to do analysis now. Again, I mentioned two softwares like NVivo and Atlasti. So now even the qualitative science you need to do analysis, but it is not like SPSS for you have more data, you need to do T analysis. It's a big science, it's big science. So for qualitative is more like word cloud. You make a word cloud, you make a diagrams, or you make algorithms. Logarithm is also is sometimes considered as in qualitative science. So nowadays qualitative is itself a big science. Again, the most important thing is actually how you design your research project. And actually this today this I share with slides, 53 slides. Can you imagine 53 slides? And
Yes.
this topic is so big that I even I get now I'm tired now because this is a big science. You need actually at least 6 hours, 5 6 hours of practice, and then you need to have, this is 2 hours of session. Then you need to do practice on the software. I have SPSS actually. I have MOS as well. So this is a big science.
Oh,
But again,
yeah.
the problem is that students don't have time to do this. Students are busy with their assignments and they have a lot of projects. I already, if you see, if you're following my webinar, I'll raise my hands. Okay, I said no, no, no. Even in this semester, I know that Emily is online, but she's rejecting my call. If she come online, she can give her comments, and I request her that please come online and share your experience.
Because
She
I think maybe some of us will be very embarrassed. Because for me, actually,
no,
I
it's
didn't
not.
finish
It's
my
not like that. I don't have any option. I don't have any option. If I give tough assignment, then students said that, oh, sir, please, it's very tough, and they will complete the assignment. I'm not saying that they will not complete the assignment. They will complete the assignment, but with the heavy heart.
yes,
And,
yes.
and after finishing the semester, when the semester end, then students said that, oh, Dr. Shahzad, Dr. Aslam is very tough. His assignment is quite tough. So I thought that, okay, no, in this semester I give very good assignments, not like that.
It's
I'll
like based
give
on the
more
academic.
detail. If Emily come online, she can explain more in detail. My assignments in this semester is more creative, is more innovative, not time taking, but it's more thought provoking. If they do, but again, I'm telling you, it's their choice because I am telling you that many students in other part of universities they are competing nowadays. Now undergraduate students are publishing a lot. Even Zaman University, your School of Chemical Engineering, New Energy. I saw a couple of good publications, good high impact factor publications.
Oh yes, yes, yes. The triple E, electrical,
Yeah,
electric.
yes, yes. They are quite good publications. And why? Because students are motivated to do them because it is they have no option. Because after graduate school for TCM, they maybe they go for practice, clinical practice. Maybe they are planning to open their own clinics. That is another perspective. But for new energy, for chemical engineering, they obviously 100% they go for masters and PhD. And actually, they are planning for nowadays. The trend is quite different. Even the two things they are going on. One, either students complete their education undergraduate, then straight forward master, and then straight forward PhD. They spend their 7 years, finish their all degrees, and that's then they go for the practice or they go for all or what they want to do. Or the
Yes.
other way is that people complete their graduation and then they only focus on certifications, on clinical practice certification. Like in pharmacy, we have some certification like pharmacotherapy, and there are some specific specializations on respiratory pharmacology or technical. In TCM, I know that you also have your own specialties, but then they don't go for master and PhD because then this is nothing to do with your master and PhD. So you have two options. So you have to decide whether you need to go for straight long-term studies till PhD, or you just need to focus on your clinical practice. Maybe later on, after 5 years or 6 years, you plan to go for your PhD. That's another way. That's you move on.
But maybe
So,
I know in China, TCM students will have to go for master and doctor to actually compete in the market. But for Malaysians, I don't think at most like in degree we're actually very enough for the market to survive in the market.
mm-hmm. I
Uh,
agree.
because for us, our final year, actually, we don't have any thesis or any projects. We just have to do clinical practice. So that's why for us, we don't have so much initiative to like write any thesis or any research
Mm-hmm.
article.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So how I hope you two learn something new because this is social sciences and behavior science research. But again, this will help you to give you some basic idea. And in my next webinar, I'm planning to give you more knowledge on hypothesis. Actually, students even they do the research, but they don't know how to make the hypothesis. They just copy and paste the hypothesis and they just finish their thesis. But the hypothesis and then theoretical foundation, theoretical concepts, theoretical model. What is theoretical modeling? Like for example, for traditional Chinese medicine, everybody know the theories behind.